The growing trend in sports nutrition is that every athlete's body is unique. At the Gatorade Sports Science Institute, we are working to help athletes and their influencers better understand these differences so they can better fuel their bodies. GSSI has a variety of tools to accomplish this, from testing the unique attributes of each athlete to nutrition personalization programs and educational outreach. GSSI is striving to make sure athletes and their influencers are more informed about their nutritional needs than ever before. GSSI is also an educational resource for sports health professionals, athletic trainers, strength and conditioning coaches, registered dietitians and sports scientists all turn to GSSI to gain insights into the latest research and strategies that they can put to use with their own athletes. Whether it's in the lab or on the field, online or offline, GSSI is giving athletes and their influencers an invaluable look at how nutrition and hydration can change their game, help them reach their goals, and become the best they can be.
Alright, I say hello and good day everyone. Magandang hapon po sa inyo lahat. And welcome to the Gatorade Sports Science Institute Webinar Series 2021. Woohoo! My name is Chicky Reyes and I'll be your host again, your MC, your moderator for the final leg, the fourth episode ng ating GSSI Webinar Series 2021. As always, okay, excited ako. Ngayon din yung buong team ng Gatorade dahil sa ating concluding episode, okay, meron tayong napakagandang topic, wonderful topic na siguradong magugustuhan ninyo. Lalo na sa panahon ngayon na tayo ay nasa loob lahat ng ating mga kanya-kanyang tahanan. Okay? So sit back lang kayo, relax lang kayo dyan because we'll be together for about what? An hour and a half. And I'm looking at our numbers now. Oy, ang ganda. Nasa mahigit magtatatlong daan na tayo. Go, go. Share nyo lang po, please. Itong information to na meron tayong episode ngayon. Live po tayo sa Facebook ng Gatorade Philippines. Alright. So, for the past month and a half, okay, we have tackled marami na po. Marami tayong napag-usapan nung nakaraang 6 na linggo. First 3 episodes natin. Nandyan yung basics of cycling. Nandyan yung training at home, ating second episode. Yung pangatlo po natin, the basics of running. And we've had a good mix of experts and athletes like halimbawa si Coach Rio, si Coach Jamie. Gayon din yung ating NBA star na si Cole Anthony. Pero sa ating last episode po today, we have another star-studded lineup of guests as we will dive into what I would call as our culminating show. Wherein pag-uusapan po natin, importante po ito, overall wellness. Very timely given the situation, as I mentioned earlier, that we are currently in, lagyan ko lang ng konting humor, ECQ Season 3. Pangatlong edition na po natin ito. Now more than ever, it is very important to take good care of your health, both physically and mentally. So today po, mga kapatid, we're going to talk about considerations to overall wellness. But before we get into that, allow me to refresh your memories on what GSSI is and what this webinar series is all about. Okay? Konting lang, balik tanaw lang po. GSSI started as a Gatorade Exercise Physiology Lab way back in 1985 before it became the Gatorade Sports Science Institute that we know today. And GSSI's long-standing mission is to help athletes and sports enthusiasts globally, okay, optimize their health and performance through research and education in hydration and nutrition science. Bringing sports science beyond the lab, GSSI aims to continuously find innovative ways to spread the science of hydration and nutrition to coaches, kanino pa ho, sa mga nutritionists, athletes, and to the sports communities the world over. And so, in an effort to reach more sports enthusiasts despite obvious limitations, here we are today in the Gatorade Philippines Facebook Live for another GSSI webinar focused on sports and wellness topics led by our scientists and experts. And speaking about sports and wellness, in the next few minutes, we would like to provide you with knowledge about total wellness, what you should consider, proper applications, and how to be mindful of it. Because, like what we said, it is very important lalo na po sa panahon na kinabibilangan natin ngayon. So, for today, ano ba ang naka-line up po natin na gagawin hanggang mga I would say about 6 PM 'no, abot tayo diyan. First po natin will be having a nice talk, a nice portion talking about supplements and mental health in athletes. Ang mamumuno po diyan walang iba kundi si Dr. Jose Raul Canas, si Doc C. Pangalawa po, second, we'll be tackling nutrition and hydration for health and wellness. And we have Professor Molly Maliari joining us for that. And then, pagdating po natin sa pangatlong portion, paborito ko ito, Q&A. And as I'd like to encourage all of you, please, yung ating comment section dyan sa baba, maliban sa shoutout mamaya, type in your questions, your comments, whatever you want to say to our speakers or even to our viewers, maganda po yan dahil makakatulong po yan sa ating webinar. And then, pang-apat, we will have an open discussion. Kasama natin walang iba kundi yung the General, okay, L.A. Tenorio ng Barangay Ginebra. At gayon din naman, itong si Dr. Karen Trinidad. Pag-uusapan, kasama natin sila. And we'll have that nice kamustahan and pag-uusapan natin ano nga ba ang nararamdaman ng mga atleta, paano nga ba nakakatulong ang mga medical practitioners natin sa mga gantong uri ng problema, especially during this time. So, again, as mentioned, we invite all of you to please send your questions regarding these topics by giving us all your comments below. Diyan lang po, type lang po kayo. I'll try to do shout-outs later on and would be glad to discuss all your questions, all your thoughts sa ating Q&A mamaya, pati sa ating open discussion. And by the way, yung mga magtatanong po sa mga special guests natin, pati rin po dun sa kanila LA and Doc Karen, yung mga mapipili po ba, kayo po ay mag-uuwi ng very nice products coming from Gatorade. Halimbawa, itong napakagandang Gatorade socks. Kita nyo ba? I hope kita nyo. Yan, ilawan ko ng konti. Partnership yan ng Gatorade at saka ng Vamos. Ano pa? Siyempre, pag nakalabas na tayo and we can start exercising outside, bike bottle ng Gatorade. Nothing beats Gatorade. Very nice bike bottle. And my personal favorite, hold on. Ito, I hope nakikita po ninyo ang napakagandang backpack ng Gatorade. So again, as mentioned, mag-type lang po kayo ng questions ninyo mamaya. Magtanong po kayo kala LA and Doc Karen. And not only that, at the end of the show, meron kaming questions also about the presentations of our special guests. And if you get the right answers, okay, kayo yung una, makakakuha din po kayo ng prizes from Gatorade. And it doesn't end there. But wait, there's more. For those who'd like to receive certificate of attendance after this webinar, please make sure that you stay with us until the end of the show because we will be flashing a QR code for all of you to sign up and answer a very quick survey. Okay? At pag nakuha nyo po yun, makakatanggap kayo ng certificate of attendance. Okay? So, without any further ado, eto na. By the way, yung mga premyo pala po natin, mga mananalo po natin, abangan nyo po yung ating social media team because they will get in touch with you on how you can claim these great prizes from Gatorade. Sir Mikey, hello nga po pala, Miss Melay. I hope you're feeling okay. Diyan na po kayo sa background. Enjoy this show. Without further ado, I'd like to start with our first topic as we get to know our first speaker. He is a local GSSI advisor, a member of the FIBA Medical Commission, also the president of the United Philippine Surfing Association, a renowned sports doctor of numerous athletes and sports teams in the Philippines. Ang alam ko, kababalik lang nito from Tokyo at hindi pa, I'm not sure kung tapos na nga yung kanyang mandatory quarantine. Kung hindi pa, tingnan nyo trabaho agad para tulungan lang kayo. Ladies and gentlemen, also known as Doc C. Sa mundo ng sports, I'd like to present the good doctor, my teammate in our Alumni League, Dr. Jose Canlas. Woo! Doc, mukhang nakamute po kayo, Doc. Ayan. Ayan, Doc, mukhang kailangan nyo pong i-refresh lang yung... It happens. Stay with us. Don't worry. We have until about 6 p.m. We'll try again the... We'll, we'll, we'll try again the good doctor. Ayan, Doc. Sige, baka you might want to go to the old school of turning off your pods. You know what? Yeah. Doc, if you could hear me, if you could refresh your browser, and then I'd like to ask our good director in the background if
Now,
there you go,
can you
Doc.
hear? All right.
Perfect,
Sorry
Doc.
about that.
Perfect. Doc, let,
Sorry
let me
about
say
that.
it again. Ladies and gentlemen, fresh from Tokyo in the last Olympics, the good doctor, also known as Dr. C, or in my case, I call him Doc George. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jose Raul Canlas.
Hi. Good afternoon. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I get confused sometimes. But just to clarify, natapos nga ang quarantine ko, Chiki. Hindi ako nandaya. I actually came in after the preliminaries of the 5-on-5. I finished the 3x3, and then after the preliminaries of 5-on-5, nung quarters and semis, I went home. So I did the 10 days, and I'm very compliant. And just to inform everyone, ngayon 4 days na yung quarantine from abroad. I just got a message from my colleague from Australia, nakasama ko sa competition. Sila 14 days sa Sydney, and then when they go to their let's say South Australia or Western Australia, another 14 days. So yung Olympic team ng Australia will be staying for 28 days in quarantine. Having said that, maswerte pa tayo na 14 days lang tayo. With this pandemic, I suggest we just be patient, go sit down and get educated with these wonderful projects like the one we're going to have today. And maybe we can start my lecture. Can I have the next slide? My lecture today would be supplements and mental health. Now, for the listeners, I want you to remember that this is just scratching the surface. Hopefully, with my very short lecture today, I get you interested. And if you're with athletes, this is near cutting edge. Supplements has changed over time. In the Athens Olympics, the IOC Medical Commission sent out a flyer to all national Olympic committees saying no supplements at all. As science has evolved over the past 16 years, now we know that there's certain supplements that are safe, but within certain guidelines. Now, what are the aims of having supplements? Number one would be the management of you if you have any micronutrient deficiencies, especially for your athletes or individuals who go into diets. They might have some vitamin deficiency, like, for example, those supposedly on a vegetarian diet sometimes don't get enough iron, so you give them iron. It also supplies a convenient form of energy and macronutrients. Case in point, there would be a sports drink. It could have direct benefit to your performance. It could be caffeine, and it can have indirect benefits to support your training. Like if you're into your hit or your high intensity training cycle, getting protein at that cycle might be better than when your regular protein intake on your regular cycle. Next slide, please. Can I have my next slide? Now, if you're going to go into supplements, this is very important, especially your athletes. We've had locally bad experiences with this, and even in the region, you have to know what is allowed and what is not allowed with the World Anti-Doping Agency. Now, the one created soon after the Sydney Olympics or around the Sydney Olympics, it is to incorporate all rules on anti-doping. Before, they would rely on the local authorities to provide the test. First time in Olympic history in Japan, in Tokyo, they used an international agency, the ITA, International Testing Agency, which sole goal is to test. So now I would expect more testing worldwide. So that's why you have to be very careful, especially if you're an athlete is into national pool, whether it's football, swimming, tennis, basketball. You have to be aware of the rules of WADA. Now, having said that, I've worked with the Japanese Olympic organizing committee since Rio, and kudos to them. If you are going to hold an Olympics during a pandemic, Japan will be the place to hold it because everything worked. Ngayon, yung mga nanunood ng basketball, just to show you the minute details that the Japanese have been going to, when you watch the basketball games, not the 3x3, the 5-on-5, you will notice three people at each behind each goal, and their sole purpose is to mop the floor. You will notice how synchronized they are, how well they do it, how patterned it is, and it's small things like that that made the Olympics very successful. Now, the fear before Olympics is the Olympic participants, which is around 50,000, would spread the virus into Japan. Fortunately, that did not happen. Of the 50,000 or more, about 400 or less than 400 were found to be positive. Nobody was ever hospitalized, and that's a very good 0.4% positivity rate. So I would say this Olympics was very successful. Definitely after Rio, it was very successful. Let's go back to my lecture. There are very few supplements, okay? Remember this. If you go into a sports store or into a health food store or any of the stores that drugstore, you will see a lot of supplements on the cases. Remember this, there are very, very few supplements that have been proven to directly affect your performance. I will name most of them here. That's caffeine, creatine, buffering agents, which the buffering agent will lessen your muscle acidosis so that your muscle contractions better. And then your nitrates, which also has yung mga nerds sa atin. If you remember the old Krebs cycle, that's where the nitrates come in. Krebs cycle is how you produce your energy. Now, you have to remember every individual respond to supplements differently. So if you're handling an athlete, you have to know exactly what you want with it and how to deal with it. If it is legal, let's say you've done your research and then you realize that this supplement is legal, then you should try it in training. Don't just go to a competition and give it. You should try it while being trained so that you know if there are adverse effects or if it even really helps. And more important, don't go in it with just what you read on internet or what you hear in a webinar like this. Have an expert opinion, have your athlete involved, have the professional involved, sit down and discuss it. And remember, anything that is too much will be bad. Everything should be done in moderation. Next slide, please. Now, why do athletes use supplements? The most common is actually they want to correct or prevent a nutritional deficiency. And this is most common in those in diets. Like at the extreme will be the pure vegans or those who rely on vegetarian meal. Sometimes they can't avail of what could provide those micronutrients so they can get the vitamins or the protein or whatever through supplements. Like I said earlier, it could provide energy and nutrients during exercise. And offhand, because we're in a Gatorade webinar, I would say a sports drink is a very prime example of this. It could provide specific and direct performance aid, and the ones I mentioned earlier, the caffeine, the buffering agents, are examples of this. Performance improvement through more effective training. An example of this would be getting the chocolate now, naging trend to recently, right after a workout, right after a game, you provide protein, and the most common way to provide protein is a chocolate drink. That's a very prime example of and having to be able to train more because you prevent some deficiencies. The other end of the spectrum would be your HGH, your human growth hormone, although this is banned and suggest you don't go into it. What HGH actually does is let you recover faster, so you will be able to train harder with more frequent periods. But like I said, HGH is not banned. It's banned by the World Anti-Doping Agency. So unless there is a specific need for it, stay away from HGH or human growth hormone and its derivatives and its synthetics. Some athletes go into it because of sponsorship. My suggestion: be very careful to sponsor. Again, you have to know if it's legal or not. Some athletes go into it just like a booster shot in COVID vaccinations, just in case it helps. It probably won't, but there's no harm in doing it. Having said that, we don't know yet if booster shots really help. And then it's because your peers use it. So some athletes use the supplement because others use it. Next slide, please. Now these are just one of the few that are the few supplements that are needed when they go into diets and certain activities. Now vitamin D, because we are in a tropical country. We usually don't need a vitamin D as long as you have a healthy diet and you expose yourself to 30 minutes of sun every day. I don't think it's a problem. By the way, vitamin D has been known to, again, in a pandemic sense, vitamin D helps in the inflammatory response. If you do have COVID, vitamin D will help you modulate that inflammatory response. Like I said earlier, iron with those with other diets, sometimes the iron is not bioavailable. There's certain vegetables that it is bioavailable. Sometimes they're not available, so you can get supplements with vitamin supplements. Next slide, please. These are the ones that support. Like I said, the sports drink, the electrolyte replacement supplements. These are the ways you can get it, either in power sachets and that you mix it, or in tablets and you take it. Very careful though, because sometimes, especially coming into mind are salt tablets. When I was an athlete many years ago, pag nagka-cramps ka, pinapakain ka ng asin, but then it might rebound on you because you're creating a hyperosmolar situation in your intestine. So instead of liquids going from your intestine to your body, it will just attract the liquid. So be very careful with the tablets and power sachets. You have to mix them very well so that they become isotonic and they can release the nutrients into your body from your intestine. You have your protein supplements, the bars, the casein. If you're a vegetarian, the soy. Again, if you look at if you can read the third column, it's usually on the post-exercise recovery. If you were in our lectures at the when was that? Last year, you would there was a lecture on how protein would help after you do your high intensity training where you will enhance recovery so that you're better off on your next training period. Then you have your liquid meal supplements. I already mentioned uh, an in thing right now is a chocolate drink right after a game or right after exercise. Next slide, please. You have your sports bars. Again, be very careful with your sports bars. My suggestion is you don't take them at the level at when you're in competition. Try them out first, because the sports bar might just rebound on you and give you gastric irritation, or not even, uh, which will enhance dehydration more than helping you out. You have your protein enriched food, and usually this is done post exercise, immediately post exercise, or during your whole meals, your regular meals during your training period. And these are your yogurt, your ice creams, your bars, and other food forms. Next slide, please. And then we go to our sports drink. Now you have to be very careful with your sports drink, because the idea of a sports drink is actually, one, to hydrate, and to hydrate you have to have a very definite proportion of carbohydrates and sugars and your liquid. No, not because you put more carbohydrates or more sugars in the drink it will be good for you. There has to, because of the protein pump, you have to have a very uh, definite ratio for it to be effective. And I think this 5% to 8% carbohydrate mix is what is accepted. Any more than that, you're probably doing more harm than good. And then you have your sodium and your potassium. Now, energy drink. I in personally don't like energy drinks, but it is very common with athletes. It usually is caffeine and its derivative, which is tyrosine, and then you have a lot of carbohydrates. Again, you have to be careful with that. I think the most common is a pre-exercise caffeine supplement. Be careful, because there is a level of caffeine which is not legal as far as anti-doping is concerned. That's why you have to be aware on how much caffeine you give your athlete, or an athlete what you take. You have your sports gels or your candies. Again, be careful with them, because they might just give you uh, upset stomach. The goal with these things is it gives you carbohydrates during exercise. I've seen this in national teams where they have ice bars, where they have gels, where they have uh, candy cones, ice cream cones, just so they have good carbohydrate intake during exercise. Now, this is a personal experience. When you have cramps, our initial thought is, uy, dehydrated yan. Over time, I realized it's not just dehydration. Maybe it's mental, or maybe it's even a carbohydrate lack. That's why I've incorporated with the teams I handle gels and ice cream, and during carbohydrate intake during exercise. It's something to think about. Next slide, please. Now, let me go into specifics, the supplements that may achieve benefits. Again, may I remind you, this is just scratching the surface. If you are really interested, there are a lot of literature out there. My suggestion is you get to the literature of peer journals. One of them will be the International Federation of Sports Medicine. They would have treaties on this. I base this lecture on the IOC treaties on supplements. It's the International Olympic Committee Medical Commission, and they published treaties supplements recently. Next slide, please. First one is caffeine. Excuse me, please. First one is caffeine. It's a stimulant, and it is well established that it enhances performance across a endurance base and even short-term submaximal bursts of speed or repeated sprint tasks. Be very careful with caffeine. Like I said, there's a level that is considered illegal as far as anti-doping is concerned. In fact, if you take your caffeine within 30 minutes of biking, it actually enhances your weight loss and not just performance. So caffeine is very useful, but you have to be careful. The mechanism is here. It improves vigilance and alertness, and then the perception of exertion during exercise. So even the mental aspect of having an exercise is affected. And this is the protocol of use. Again, I suggest that you're very careful if you're going to caffeine, because one, it can give you upset stomach or gastrointestinal discomfort, and then there is a level of caffeine which is illegal as far as if you're as far as anti-doping is concerned. I think I had I'm not sure, but offhand, anything more than 3 cups of coffee. Again, the cup is very um, subjective. 3 cups of coffee before an athletic event. If you are tested within an hour, I think more than 3 cups would make it illegal. Next slide, please. These are the performance impact of caffeine. It improves endurance capacity to fatigue. And then during exercise, it actually helps you maintain that much effort. During short-term submaximal sprints, it's very effective. But again, you have to be careful on how much you take. And these are those that might help. Large doses of caffeine do not increase the performance benefit. Like I said, too much of anything might be wrong, and it's most likely to increase the negative effects, which is the gastric effects, nausea, the insomnia, the restlessness. And then lower caffeine doses, you have to test it into caffeine supplementation. You have to test it with the athlete. One thing to remember is caffeine is a diuretic. So even in small doses, it will enhance diuresis or urinating in athletes. Some athletes are more prone to it than others. So you have to be careful on the hydration state of your athlete if you're into caffeine use. Next slide, please. Now, creatine, it's creatine loading says it is enhances the performance in high intensity exercise. Again, it aim is to increase creatine stores, and then it augments the energy release. But again, you have to be very careful on creatine. Now, my warning and this is a study by the FIBA Medical Commission maybe about 15 years ago or less. It was before the Beijing Olympics. They took the creatines off the shelves in Europe, and they found that more than 75% of them really didn't base the performance enhancement from the creatine, but it had additives which were illegal, like what do you call this, epinephrine and its derivative, uh, the amphetamines and its derivative, and even steroids. That's why that was a basis on telling people to be very careful on the supplements off the shelf. Next slide, please. Now you have nitrates. It's a very common supplement that is just recently in the mindset of athletes. Well, just recently, it's about 4 to 8 years ago. It is very good in high intensity, prolonged exercises, so mostly in sprints. The mechanism is getting the bioavailability in the pathway to increase function. Like I said, those who are nerdy among us, it's in the Krebs cycle, or the production of energy. And this, in the safer way, is saying how you do it. You get high nitrate containing foods like vegetables, spinach, beetroot, and then you take it a few hours before your performance. However, there are nitrate supplements available in the market. Again, since supplementation has no overseeing study to it, we don't know how effective they are. But it's nice to know that nitrate is helpful on a moderate basis. Next slide, please. These are the performance impact of nitrate. Again, it's in the bursts of energy, like 12 to 40 minutes in duration. Anything less is probably not good. Anything more, it's probably won't help. So it's 12 to 40 minute in duration, which is a team sport, or let's say maybe the middle distance or uh, middle distance runs. Here are the considerations. Again, there has to be care in taking your nitrates. Uh, the problem with nitrates is as you get to the higher of athletic ability, the performance addition is a lot less. Performance gains appear harder to obtain in highly trained athletes, and this is across the board. If you're highly trained, most of them don't need supplements anymore. Again, on the other side of the spectrum, if your competition is at a very low level, maybe the supplements won't help you either. Next slide, please. Beta-alanine is one of those that's also seen in a lot of our supplement stores. The mechanism is it acts as a buffer, and so a constant daily supply of beta-alanine will increase your buffering state of your muscle. Its performance is very small. And it is usually those in exercises which are 30 seconds and 10 minutes in duration. These are the bursts of speeds and the short to middle distance runs. If you're coming off the bench and just in the game for about 5 minutes, this probably will help you. There is still no direct correlation to performance benefit, but effectiveness is harder to realize again with well-trained athletes. It's still being studied. These are the buffer solutions that I mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. The sodium bicarbonate again is the buffering potential, which will help you if you have high intensity sustained, which is about, like I said, less than 12 minutes. This is the mechanism, and then it's the protocol. Considerations is enhanced performance of short-term high intensity lasting 60 seconds in duration will probably be helped, but not anything more than 10 minutes, it probably won't be helpful. Next slide, please. The problem with sodium bicarbonate is the way you give it. It's either given intravenous, which is actually illegal, or oral, which has a high propensity for GI distress and upset. Next slide, please. Now, if you're going to supplements, and especially the ones I've just said, you have to seek professional advice. It's very delicate. One, it's the legal use. Second is it might have some health repercussions down the line. Never mix, and always seek professional help, and always be aware of the effects of your general health more than anything. So beware and seek. My suggestion is be very knowledgeable of what supplement you're going to use, and just read on it and seek professional help. The people who know the supplement. Next slide. Excuse me. Okay. Again, I'll try to make this fast. I've been asked to say something about mental health. This past year is probably the most stressful in mental health of athletes because of the pandemic. I was quarantined for 10 days, and that in itself was very taxing. What more if you have all the stresses? This picture is a picture of the first 3x3 in Singapore 2010, the youth games. Things have changed since then. Next slide, please. And this is a picture of the 3x3 we did in Tokyo. Rules have changed. My point is there is always an improvement as far as athletes are concerned. Mental health is one of them. Please be aware that it's not a myth. Mental health is here to stay, especially with the world we live in now, with social media, with the pressures of commercialism, and with the pandemic. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, those who really centered on mental health in the last Olympics were two people, I feel. And this is Osaka. Osaka is a African American with Japanese roots, and she actually has had a difficult climb even when she was at the top of her game. If you remember her game against the Williams sisters, she actually won, but the focus was still on her opponent, and she had a difficult time because she chose to be Japanese rather than American in Tokyo. In fact, she was the torchbearer, and that in itself was a very trying part because there is a part of Japan that wanted a pure Japanese to be a torchbearer. Another one is Simone Biles of gymnastics. You know that she quit many of her sure medals because of mental health. So it does happen, and it just doesn't happen to the top athletes, to even our collegiate athletes. Next slide, please. If you go through the studies, 1 in 5 adults will deal with mental health sometime in their life. For various reasons. Exercise is said to be improve your moods and mental well-being because of the increase of certain hormones, which are the endorphins and enkephalins. As an aside, the endorphin produced is a cannabinoid derivative, which is marijuana. Uh, it is not really performance enhancing, and I think the way right now is to remove marijuana from the illegal sports drugs by a World Anti-Doping Agency. One of the top women sprinters of the USA was not allowed to go to Tokyo because she tested positive for marijuana a few weeks before the Tokyo Olympics. Having said that, with the legalization of marijuana uh, all over the world, the way there is it eventually will be removed as a performance enhancing drug. The background to marijuana is that in the Nagano Olympics, the gold medalist of the snowboard freestyle actually took marijuana, and since it was freestyle, he supposedly had an advantage over the other because of the effects of marijuana, and that's what one of the things that forced the IOC to ban it as a performance enhancing drug. But as we know now, it's not really a performance enhancing drug. I mean, physically, it's not going to improve your body mechanisms. Having said that, even if you go into move exercise supposedly to improve your moods, athletes are not immune to health challenges. In fact, because of the factors I said earlier, social media, commercialism, and the world being one as far as athletics is concerned, there are more mental challenges now than the athletes of 30 or 50 years ago. So I think it's unfair when older athletes say mahina ang loob ng athletes ngayon because their challenges are different. The stage is different. Next slide, please. What would bring the mental health challenges in an athlete? The sport involved social sport mentioned earlier. And as I will mention later, in fact, I'm so happy that Dr. Karen Tolentino is one of your speakers later, because I will mention her a lot later on in this lecture. Solo sports, because you have to be a little more, you don't have support, are more susceptible to mental health challenges. All of our medalists in the last Olympics, Hidilyn and the boxers, they went through so much mental challenges to get where they are, and that's not discounting all the others, the uh, other athletes who had to go through training and not knowing if the Olympics is going to happen, not knowing if the trials are going to happen, and yet you want to keep your level of training at a certain level. And it was very difficult for this, but I'm glad we had athletes, and I'm glad we have resources for athletes now that was not available to our athletes before. Now, student athletes, if you're thinking of collegiate athletes, they have the added pressure of academics, and I personally deal with this because I deal with a lot of student athletes, and you have to be a little more sensitive to their needs. A study of the NBA have shown up to 35 of their athletes have some mental issues one way or the other. So it does happen. Next slide. If you go into a certain college, you will find that more than a third of them now have mental issues, not necessarily pathologic, but it's just the environment we give them now. And of this group, only about 30% will seek help. Of the college athletes, only 10% will seek help. And that's because of the stage that we put them in, that they're athletes, that they should be strong-willed, dapat malakas ang loob nila. But we have to be aware that mental issues do happen, especially in situations like what we are now, which is the pandemic. Imagine the bubbles that we put them through, that they're just in the room, they play, they go back to their room, they play, they train, they go back to their room with no form of support whatsoever. Next slide, please. These are the things that probably mental issues that our athletes display. There's the stress, and stress can manifest itself in mental or in physical ways. You have the eating disorders, you have the burnout, where they just quit. Case of this would be our pole vaulter, that after his event, he suddenly said, "Kaaway ko ngayon ang pole vault," but thankfully he got back and he's going back to training in Italy. You have the depression, and then you have the anxiety of not knowing what's going to happen. Next slide. You have around, and if you're training in our pandemic situation, there are a lot of help. You have the professionals like Dr. Karen. You have if you're going to train in a bubble, this is just an example. Is you can have even technology helping athletes through the pandemic. You have social media, you have WhatsApp, you have constant contact with your athletes, not necessarily on a face-to-face basis. Having said that, hopefully we can get some collegiate sports face-to-face by February, depending on what happens within the next few weeks. Next slide, please. Now, I will base my lecture on mental health on our most successful Olympian ever, which is Hidilyn. Okay, because Hidilyn went through a lot to gain a gold medal, and maybe her story will inspire our younger athletes. Next slide, please. Let me give you a small history on Hidilyn. In I think 2002, Hidilyn won in the Batang Pinoy. She's a Batang Pinoy product. And at that time, the Philippine Sports Commission had a very, very pioneering identification, talent identification program, where it considered anthropometric measures and the performance of athletes. And Hidalin, when she won, her there was a blip. She actually excelled, and she was what, in her early teens when that happened. And because of that, the Philippine Sports Commission, and this was 2002, 2003, the Philippine Sports Commission actually sent her to China to train. And Hidalin persevered through the succeeding Olympics, through the heartache, through the politics of local sports. She persevered, and especially this last year, even after she had her own doubts, even after we didn't know if the Olympics were going to happen, and she was in land, she persevered, and she's reaping the benefits only because I think one of the main factors is she had very good support. Now, you've read about it. The athletic programs of the country in the last 3 or 4 years have been very supported by the government and private industry, and why I think that's the factor why we were very successful. We've always had the talent, we've always had the athletes. In fact, we've lost some of them because of politics, but with this last Asian Games, last Southeast Asian Games, and now the Olympics, we've been quite successful in producing award-winning athletes, and a lot of it is support. And with Hidalin, I think a lot of it is the support of her sports psychologist, who you will have later on as a speaker, and you can ask her the questions on what Hidalin went through. Next slide, please. This is the talent identification program of the PSC. The head of this is Joy Reyes. She's now head of the Sports Academy in the Philippine Sports Commission. It was in with Department of Education. Hidalin doesn't know this, but when she won in the Batang Pinoy, and then her anthropometrics and other factors were determined, there was a blip, and she said, "Oh, potential to." And the nice thing about her is she persevered from then, which is what, 18 years ago, and now she's reaping the benefits of a gold medal. Next slide, please. This is, I think, the main factor on Hidalin's success is her team HD, her team Hidalin Diaz. Now, the second person on your right is Dr. Karen, and she went through everything. And I could the mental stress on Hidalin, training in a foreign land with very minimal physical support was very taxing, but they pulled through. In fact, if you remember, in the Asian trials, she lost, and everybody said, wala na yan. But then she persisted, and she even had a record-breaking lift. And I think that's one of the factors there is her support, and this Team HD is her support. And I think this will be a key to our future solo athletes. Next slide, please. This is Dr. Karen, and they're very proud, and I'm very proud of them. It is a blueprint that we should have very competent professionals as far as mental health is concerned. We've had very few the past 20, 30 years, but the athletes themselves were not very receptive to it. I think over time, even the athletes have realized that it will help. And so I think it's the blueprint of going forward is we consider it, not just in elite sports, but even in collegiate and even high school sports. Next slide, please. Now with Hidalin, these were the factors she faced in the past at least year. There was a pandemic, and just the stresses of the pandemic. I remember they arranged a WhatsApp call with Hidalin just for me to settle her down about the pandemic, and then even getting her vaccines, because she was in Malaysia, and Malaysia had problems with their vaccines. We had to arrange it. Just that brought a lot of mental stress to her. She was not with her family for a long period of time. Of course, she had anxiety about everything, about whether the Olympics will push through, whether even the trials will push through, whether she will be supported still if something happens to her. The aimless athletic identity is just very difficult. Like now, she was after the Olympics, her mind was set to the Southeast Asian Games, but then the Southeast Asian Games won't be there in December. It'll be much later in next year. So how will she adjust to the situation? Her main advantage, like I said, is she had the team behind her. She had her strength and conditioning coach. She had her nutritionist. She had her sports psychologist, and she had her coach, which helped her through. And finally, she won a gold medal, our very first gold medal. And you can say this with all our other medalists and all our other Olympic athletes of the country and maybe of the world, as the successful ones had a profile, had professional help, and it helps a lot. And hopefully this will be the protocol for the next generation of athletes. Next slide, please. Now, I actually talked to Dr. Karen and what she did with Hidalin, and she did a bullet point. She advised, and my suggestion is take this into mind, and maybe it will apply to your situation. You tell your athletes to be resilient. They have to adapt. They have to cope. The different situations, whether it's a bubble in Ilocos or a bubble in Clark or a closed circuit, you have to be resilient, and you have to go with a discipline, with an endpoint of doing well in an athletic activity. You accept the situation and you create over it. Hidalin was trapped in Malaysia. When she accepted that she couldn't come home, she approached, I think, the vice president of the Weightlifting Association Malaysia. She was given a garage, and she created a gym in that garage where she was lifting weights that were just made up, and she adapted. She focused on what she can control and what's controllable. She had the regular routine, and in that routine she incorporated a me time where she enjoys, and I think that's very important. And she stayed connected with her team. The nice thing about our situation now is with social media, with the interconnectivity of the world, it's easier to stay connected. I personally went through that in the semi bubble in Tokyo and in my quarantine, and that's just a few days. And what helped me was being able to talk to my family, to my wife, to my granddaughter times, and it helps. And what more for your athletes who need it? Next slide, please. Uh, she was told it's not okay. It's okay to be not okay. You have to be open with your feelings and laugh as a sense of humor. I think it's very important, and that's why I have Marge Dilal as a picture here, because she was the most approachable girl. She was the happiest girl. In fact, because of her attitude, on my way home from Tokyo, it just so happened that. I was with a judge of skateboarding who was from Brazil, but he stayed in LA, and I was surprised when he said that Marge Didal is very popular in the skateboarding world, even if she didn't win the medal, because of her attitude. And that attitude of always smiling, of taking things as they are and not making having them let you down, and having a sense of humor, I think that helps. And I think March Didal has a long way. Her career will be with us for a long time. Next slide, please. Talk with it with your friends. You have your support staff. Again, seek professional help. It's now available. We have people like Dr. Karen around. Uh, you have to learn to de-stress and time management. Next slide, please. In the end, what it is you enjoy your life. Enjoying your life, whether it's a professional athletic life or it's just your everyday life, it will help out cope with difficult times. And I think that's what That's what will help, and that's what helped Hiddelin win her gold, and that's what helped Didal, even if she didn't win a medal, go through it and have a blueprint on how it is in the future when she competes again. Next slide, please. That's it. Thank you. I'm sorry I overstepped my boundaries. Thank you for your time, and I will be around for questions after the very alluring Professor Molly will give her talk. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much, Doxy, Dr. Pat po sa inyo, and I hope you guys kept on writing on those pieces of paper on your notebooks, because beautiful things that Doc shared, no, from different supplements on the key takeaways. I know you have a lot of questions in your mind. I've been reading our comment section here, and I tip my hat off to Coach Kale for helping us answer all these questions. But more importantly, Doc C, we love the portion when you shared about mental health and mental wellness. And guys, if you have questions, keep that comment section box there busy. Ask away. And if you get lucky, we'll choose your question. We're going to win a prize, and we're going to ask that later on our Q&A. Up next, we have also a local GSSI advisor, an associate professor for the Department of Sports Science. Wow. In the University of the Philippines, with expertise on sports nutrition and ergonomics. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome the good professor, Professor Molly Malyari.
Hello and good afternoon to everyone. I hope that my audio is coming in clear. Okay, I think so. All right, so thank you, Doc C, for that wonderful talk. You know, you certainly learned a lot from your talk this afternoon, and thank you, Chiki, as well for that introduction. So I think we can start with slides. All right. So next slide, please. So the topics that we're going to cover this afternoon is basically about concepts on the role of nutrition and hydration in health and wellness. Okay, we will also be looking at some nutrition and hydration recommendations towards the end of the session. So next slide, please. Now let us start with why proper nutrition is vital to our health. From this figure that you see on the screen, which is by the Global Health Observatory by the World Health Organization, the Philippines has a total of 27.6% of its adult population who are overweight and obese. So this statistic may not be too different from our neighboring countries. However, you can also see, that some countries towards the top of the figure have over 60% of their adult population who are overweight and obese. Okay, so why so much attention on these figures then? Next slide, please. These numbers are of great concern because obesity increases the risk for chronic diseases, or what we call our non-communicable diseases, or NCDs, which is currently one of the biggest global health problems. It is also termed a global pandemic that has shifted from affecting just mostly the rich countries to now even the poorest of nations worldwide. So as we all know, these NCDs are caused by modifiable risk factors that are lifestyle related. So these major causes include an increase in sedentary lifestyle and an improper diet. So as can be seen in this figure on the upper left side, it is predicted that the prevalence of NCDs in the Philippines will increase in the next 10 years. Is there really something that we can do to prevent this pandemic from spreading? Next slide, please. And of course, the answer is yes. Several organizations such as the WHO and the Exercise is Medicine, just to name a few, have addressed this growing global concern. The solution being something quite simple, as a matter of fact, as you can see here, modify factors that increase the risk of chronic disease, including unhealthy diet, excessive energy intake, physical inactivity, and tobacco use. So, for a healthy lifestyle, actually, we always recommend to pair a healthful diet with increased physical activity. However, for this session, we will focus more on the diet part for overall health and wellness. So, next slide, please. To address the obesity issue, one would need a basic understanding of energy balance in our bodies. If you wanted to maintain your weight, then energy intake or the calories taken in should be more or less equal to the energy expended in a day. If you, however, wanted to lose some kilos, then you would have to tip the scale towards the left side, meaning less energy intake and greater energy expended to create what we call a negative energy balance. This doesn't happen overnight. Changes in body mass and body composition will happen over time, and these changes will also depend maybe on food choices that you make and regularity and type of exercise that is being done. Next slide, please. Now, your diet is the food that you eat in any normal day. When you are dieting, this is when you modify your eating habits and intentionally change your food choices for a specific purpose. An obese person, for example, will need to modify his or her diet for weight management, while someone with type 2 diabetes mellitus will have to modify his diet or her diet to manage blood sugar levels. So, a dietitian or medical doctor may be consulted before going on any diet plan, especially if there are comorbidities that are involved. So, there many diets, no, that you can choose from. Most of them are, of course, effective. What is important is that you can stick to the diet plan for the long term. So, general recommendations for a healthy lifestyle should be followed, as mentioned earlier, healthier food choices, including physical activity in the daily routine. So, next slide, please. To start out, baseline measurements are always recommended. This will help let us know if actual progress is happening or not. The BMI is recommended for the general population. The Asian classification is greater than or equal to 23. For overweight, obese 1 greater than or equal to 25, obese 2 greater than or equal to 30. This may be paired with the waist circumference measurements for greater accuracy. Of course, central obesity increases the risk for cardiovascular diseases and insulin resistance. So this is something that we have to watch out for as well. So body fat measurement may be done by some gadgets that are available to us. Let's say BIA, body impedance analysis scale, and the acceptable or considered healthy body fat for women, about 25 to 31%. For men, 18 to 25%. Fitness buffs and athletes usually have lower values. All right. So measurement of energy intake is also recommended by using phone apps that are widely available to us nowadays. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide, please. All right, a healthy diet should have, number one, adequacy. So this is enough nutrients to cover the needs of an individual to be able to meet, we mentioned a while ago, the goals of the individual, always in consideration of one's health, of course. Next, we have balance. Your diet should contain different kinds of foods in quantities and proportions so that the requirement for calories, your macro and micronutrients is adequate. Third is calorie control. Be mindful of one's energy allowance for the day and paired with moderation. Moderation is key to calorie control. It means having just enough, not too much, not too little, and then you have variety. So this refers to consuming different foods from each of the food groups on a regular basis. Next slide, please. So aside from those previously mentioned, a healthy diet is comprised mostly of nutrient-dense meals and snacks. So think of it simply as the exact opposite of eating what we call junk food and processed food. So snacking is also a good thing. It keeps us from getting hungry between meals, helps us maintain our energy, and it keeps us also from overeating during our meals. But again, snacking, stay away from the junk food, processed food for your snacks. Instead, choose nutrient-dense foods as well as beverages. Next slide, please. Carbohydrate is a very important macronutrient for our bodies. It should make up about 45 to 65% of our daily diet. Complex carbohydrates are recommended, whole grain over white bread whenever possible. As an example, substitute cups of white rice with legumes and vegetables, as these are more nutrient dense. Okay, so reducing the consumption of food with added simple sugars is also recommended. Next slide, please. Food swaps, of course, may also be done for more healthier options, such as swapping sugary breakfast cereals for plain, flavored yogurts for low-fat or fat-free yogurts, and adding fresh fruit to sweeten your food, reduce the sugar that you put in your coffee and your tea as well. So recommended is about 10 teaspoons or the maximum should not exceed 10 teaspoons if you are on a 2,000 kilocalorie diet for free sugars. Next slide, please. In the recent dietary guidelines for Americans, an upper limit for total fat is no longer specified. So the consumption is based on the type and diet that you follow and the calorie needs for weight loss and maintenance. So this is probably in light of the different diets that have been proven to be actually effective. Some of them, since the calories from carbohydrates are much less, then it has to be made up with either protein or the fat in the diet. But regular recommendations for those who maintain normal macronutrient intakes are at 20 to 35% of daily calories. So more omega-3 and 6s should be taken, hence more plant and fish-based fats, right? Avoid trans fat and partially hydrogenated oils because they are not generally recommended as safe. Grass. Next slide, please. Some good news for us Filipinos, realizing that trans fat intake has no benefit to the human body. The anti-trans fat Senate bill has been passed in the Philippines so that the DOH will seek to eliminate trans fat in the food supply in the next few years. Good for all of us, right? Next slide, please. Now, protein, 10 to 35% of daily calories should be from protein. For muscle building, protein intake may be increased from 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight to 1.2 to 2 grams per kilogram of your body weight. So plant-based protein may be a better option for those wanting to reduce saturated fat in their diet. One tip, just remember to spread out your protein consumption throughout the day by including protein in meals and snacks as well. Next slide, please. Now, fiber, over 90% of adult males and females are deficient in fiber. The main purpose, of course, of taking fiber is for a healthy gut and healthy bowel movement on a daily basis. Okay, next slide, please. With COVID-19 and the flu season, actually now building up the immune system is also of prime importance. As you can see here, at least 5 a day. The 5 a day campaign is based on advice from the World Health Organization, which recommends eating a minimum of 400 grams of fruit and vegetables a day. Okay? And this is supposed to help lower the risk of serious health problems, including our NCDs, and to help keep a healthy microbiome. In cases wherein eating a half a kilo of fruit and vegetables is not realistic for you, then of course supplementation with multivitamins can be taken, no, to help the body's immune system as well. Next slide, please. So for overall health and wellness, water balance through proper hydration is also very important. Next slide, please. We are mostly made up of water, and this water level needs to be maintained for health. Composition depends on several factors such as age, sex, and mostly the amount of muscle that a person has. Next slide, please. Humans are physiologically dependent on water. We need it for metabolism, to regulate our temperature, for movement. Basically, we need it for life. Next slide, please. Maintenance of water balance is therefore very important. On the average, we need to be at euhydration, where intake of fluid matches our fluid output on a daily basis. So excessive water intake is also unhealthy and has caused hyponatremia in endurance activities. Hypohydration, of course, where output exceeds intake, has negative effects, especially in the sports and exercise setting. Next slide, please. As we can see here, severity of the symptoms will increase with the level of dehydration. So at 2%, some people may already feel some discomfort or irritability. Of course, there is an individual response to dehydration. Some people are more sensitive than others, while some can even perform very well in sports at 10% dehydration. They do not die, no? But some can feel detrimental effects of dehydration, even at a very low level. Next slide, please. So in order to maintain water balance, intake of fluid from food and beverage should replace what is lost through sweating, respiration, and through passing of our waste materials. Okay? Remember that some factors will have to be considered when addressing water needs, such as the level of physical activity, temperature, relative humidity, altitude, and of course, sickness. In some cases, there might be dehydration without feeling thirsty in these cases. Next slide, please. So for most situations, a healthy amount would be 2.2 liters for females and 3 liters per day for males. Okay? If drinking to thirst works for you, you can drink to thirst. All right? But it is safest to learn to hydrate as a habit, because some people actually choose to ignore their thirst. Make it a habit, of course, to keep your water bottle with you all day, and don't forget to refill it whenever you can. Right? Next slide, please. Certain groups are more susceptible to dehydration. So be mindful that older adults and children have decreased thirst sensation. Okay, and some others have higher fluid needs, as well as active individuals and athletes, and those who are pregnant and lactating as well. Next slide, please. So a simple way to check one's hydration status is urine color and volume of urine. So generally, the darker the color of the urine, and of course, a smaller volume, right, means a negative fluid balance throughout the day. So please drink more. Okay, that's what your body is telling you. One more thing to remember is that salt is removed when you sweat. Okay, so some are salty sweaters. All right, so more sweat is removed when these people sweat. So replacement by taking drinks with electrolytes, such as sports drinks, is important for these people for fluid retention. Next slide, please. So it's very important that we develop healthy hydration habits. To sum up our tips for hydration for health and wellness, number one, make your fluids available throughout the day. Bring your water bottle with you and refill as often as possible. Hydrate as a habit and not as a reaction to thirst. Third, all types of liquids help hydrate. No? Food helps hydrate you as well. So you might want to choose some uh, food that has high water content. Be mindful of factors affecting fluid balance. Hydrate accordingly and measure your sweat rates. So the aim is to replace also what you have lost. This value is very individual. No? Hydration is not one size fits all. So it would be best to measure how much you actually lose through sweat in a day, especially if you're active. Next slide, please. So to sum up, with regards to eating and hydration practices, a healthy diet equals variety, one with variety, moderation, and balance. Try to eat more nutrient dense food for your meals, including your snacks. With regards to hydration, aim for pale yellow urine. This indicates that you are well hydrated, and also more water is not necessarily better. So just aim for good balance throughout the day. All right, next slide. Of course, we have only scratched the surface. There is a limited time to discuss the details with regards to nutrition and hydration for wellness. But you can, of course, visit the GSSI website for more information on this at gssiweb.org. So thank you so much for listening. Chiki?
Professor Molly Malyari. Wow. Same thing with Doxy. I was actually writing down and nodding at the same time because I can now say that the nutritionist dietitian that I got is actually good because Prof, you validated everything that she's doing for me. Okay, I'd like to bring in Doxy and Professor Molly back. This time we're going to have our Q&A. I know that a lot of you have questions in your respective minds. And again, Doc George, fantastic lecture earlier. Professor Molly, as I mentioned, I was nodding my head on every slide that you presented. And I tip my hat off to my nutritionist dietitian for doing the same thing for me. Okay, Q&A portion. I will start. I hope you don't mind, Doxy. I'll start ladies first. I go with Professor Molly with this first question that we have. Prof. Molly, this is for you. Should athletes reformulate or should an athlete reformulate his or her diet every time the training program is altered? I mean, let's talk top athletes. Let's talk weekend warriors who are looking after their health as well, right? Because you go to an instructor, a coach, and sometimes the training regimen, the training program changes. Having said that, do we also need to change our diet, Prof. Molly?
Okay, so this is actually a very good question, and I can answer it from many different angles. Although, no, I'm not an R&D. All right, so I think from my opinion, all right, R&Ds might be able to see something else, or maybe Doc C. But if an athlete was trying to change his body composition or try to reduce weight, all right, I think it would be important to modify or to reformulate the diet, all right. And if the training, there are different training phases, correct? So if the training phase is high in intensity, and it might be prudent, to change towards adding more carbohydrate in that diet. All right, so that is something that But for the most part, I think, especially for recreational athletes, I think the macronutrient balance should remain the same, and maybe just modify a bit on the strategies. Like, for example, maybe introducing carbohydrate if they are expecting longer periods of activity, or maybe more high intensity activity as well. Okay, and of course the protein, no, for recovery afterwards.
Thank you, Professor Molly. I like the way you answered that question, because it really shows that, I think, in my opinion, the nutritionist, dietitian, and whoever your coach is, whoever asked that question, it would be nice if they could talk, right, and then see how the exercises are going and how your nutrition is going. So, Prof. Molly, thank you for that. I jump to Doc C. Doc C, we have this nice question, but allow me to put some context, Doc George, in this question, okay? And the question actually is there a right way or process in cutting down on supplements? Why are we asking that? The context, Doc, is, let's say there's an athlete who is accustomed to regularly taking a particular type of supplement, let's say caffeine, right? And then that athlete or that weekend warrior decides to cut it down or remove that due to his exercises being low in intensity. So, Doc, using that context, is there a right way or process in cutting down on supplements?
Well, before I answer that, I agree totally with Professor Molly. For the most part, for we just have a regular diet, and you probably don't eat supplements. Having said that, if you're used to supplements, my suggestion, if you're going to cut down, don't do it cold turkey,
Hmm.
because you've been using it for a long time. Your body has adjusted to. Let your body adjust to cutting down on the supplement. So don't do it cold turkey. For 1 week, do about half. For the next week, do about a third until you completely get rid of it. If you've been doing it right, there would be no harm in doing this. There might be more harm if you're going cold turkey and cut out everything all of a sudden.
Okay, nice, nice. So, Doc, I heard you earlier mention that when you go to particular, let's say, fitness activities or competitions or races, don't just put anything inside your body. So it's the same thing, right, Doc? If you're going to take it out, you do it slowly, right? No,
Yes,
don't just
yes,
take it out immediately.
yes, yes. I agree
Okay.
with that. Totally agree with that.
Thank you, Doc. See, we got one more for Dr. Canlas, because you were talking about mental health and wellness earlier, and at the same time, the bubble setting for our athletes, right? Not only here in the Philippines, but in the Tokyo Olympics where you came from. And the third question revolves around those two things that I just mentioned, Doxy. In bubble settings, what would you consider are common challenges mentally amongst athletes, and what are the usual remedies offered, Dr. Canlas?
Well, in our experience of bubble settings, it's the isolation that they experience. Uh, in our PBA bubble, that was the most common. Is in fact, there are certain teams that just gave up because their athletes didn't want anymore. You have to keep them. You have to keep them occupied. There'll be activities. There'll be for the short-term bubbles like the FIBA bubble. That was quite easy. With vaccinations, though, we can apply more activities. Having said that, though, again, let me point out there is a bubble now that is completely women. This is the PBL. The
Mhm.
women dealt with the mental issues a lot easier than the men. And this is, I guess, that's across the board. Iba talaga babae.
I have to agree with you, Doc. Not only because my wife is watching us right now, but I have to agree with you that women can take it better. I think no that isolation that we have, the quarantine that we have, and you mentioned the PBA also tinkering or thinking of doing another bubble, and I'm sure our guest later on. We can ask him also of what
Oh yes,
he plans to
yes,
do when he goes inside that bubble, if that bubble happens. Last question for our two guests here, and I hope you don't mind if I ask the same question for both of you. I'll probably start with Professor Molly for this one. And Prof. Molly, as an athlete, do I need supplements even if I am able to eat properly? Like I already have a balanced diet. Do I still need it? Can I do without supplements? We'll start with Professor Molly before we go to Dr. Kalnas again. Prof. Molly?
Okay, thanks for the question, Chiki. And the answer is no. You do not need supplements if you already have a balanced diet. Actually, it's recommended that if there is really no need or there is no evidence that you need supplements, then don't take it. As you said, no, Doc C mentioned a while ago, if you are reliant on supplements, it's like your body is so used to it. You have to pull out the supplements if you want to stop taking it, pull it out slowly because it's like your body thinks that that's your normal state. So, if you don't need it, really don't start. don't take. Don't
For
take it.
as long as you have a balanced diet, right, Prof. Molly?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Dr. Canlas, your thoughts on that?
yeah, totally agree. Let me point out that the way Prof. Melly answered beauty contestant, thank you for your question. Anyway, I totally agree. If you have a balanced diet, your need for supplements is very minimal, if at all. If you're taking it to improve your performance, like I said in my earlier lecture, the margin of profit in a supplement diet is very small, and it probably won't affect your performance.
Fantastic. You know what? The time that we have for the two of you, it's not enough. I have friends here messaging me, personally, asking me to ask all these other questions. Sorry, guys, but maybe we can set up one more like this, and I'm sure Prof. Molly and Dr. Canlas would love to answer all those questions. But we're at the end of your portion, Prof. Molly and Dr. Canlas, and would like to hear your final messages to all our viewers. We all know that being physically fit and mentally fit, both are equal, both are important, especially in what we're going through right now, this
Yeah.
pandemic and this ECQ season 3 that we are in right now. And would love to hear from the two of you as you give your final messages to all our viewers, whether it be a Juan de la Cruz, a weekend warrior, to the most seasoned athlete, PBA athlete or Olympian that we have, ano pong mensahe nyo? People who want to remain physically fit and mentally fit. Professor Molly, will start with you.
All right. So there are many facets, no, for one to be healthy, totally healthy and well. So they're all interrelated. So what Doc C was mentioning a while ago, connected din po yan sa, it's also connected with nutrition and hydration practices. So just be mindful of everything that you do, no? But at the same time, try to relax and be as stress free as possible during this time. So that's it. Thank you, Chiki.
Thank you, Professor Molly. And tama ka, Doxy, ano, may pagka Miss Universe.
Sanay, sanay,
Sanay si Professor Molly.
sanay.
World peace.
Doc,
Doxy.
Doc Canlas, I'd like you to wrap up this first portion of our show. You've mentioned a lot about mental health and
Yes.
wellness, and I'm sure marami pong gusto makarinig po muli sa inyo because everyone, wala hong ano yan, pinipili. We all go through it. Go ahead, Dr. Canlas.
Yes. Well, mental health is an issue. Don't be afraid to seek help. Right now, we have professionals, even just your family. Don't let it get you down. I know there are challenges now. And to help in your mental health is to take care of your body. wellness with what Prof. Molly has said and the few things that I have mentioned. Take care of your body, and most of all, coming from where I am, please be safe and get vaccinated, please.
Ang ganda. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Molly Malyari and Dr. George Canlas. Everyone, please give our guest speakers a virtual round of applause for spending this afternoon and evening with us. Prof. Molly, Doc George, stay safe, stay healthy, and we hope to see you again in the next edition of our GSSI webinar series. Maraming salamat po sa
Stay
inyo.
safe, Chicky. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Likewise, Prof. Likewise, Doc. Ingat po kayo. Wow. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a fully loaded discussion. And coming from that discussion, sabi nga ni Dr. Canlas, guys, make sure that you have and Professor Molly, make sure that you have a nice body by making sure you put the right things in it. And on the mental side, don't forget to ask everyone that you know, kamusta ka? How are you? Sometimes that's what it takes lang eh. Kamustahin nyo lang po yung mga people around you. Okay? Now, I learned a lot. I know you guys learned a lot from Dr. Canlas and Professor Molly, and we expect that you will continue to learn more from our guests, final two guests this evening, and we'll be having this nice conversation with them, nice kamustahan with them. Introducing our next set of guests. He is a professional basketball player, very popular, obviously, here in the Philippines and even outside. Once upon a time when he used to play for our national squad, tinatakutan ito ng international teams, basketball teams. A four-time finals MVP in the PBA, also known as the General and the Iron Man in the PBA, having played 670, I hope my number is right, consecutive games to date. I'd like to present to you LA, the General Tenorio. And joining him is a renowned sports psychologist, part of Team Heidelin Diaz, who's a big factor for our country's first Olympic gold medal. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present as well Dr. Karen Trinidad. Woohoo! Hello, LA and Doc Karen. Good evening
Hello,
to
good
both
evening.
of you. Good evening.
Hello, good evening, Chiki.
Before we dive into our questions that we have here, kamustahan muna I'd like you to remove your hats as Dr. Karen and LA. First of all, how are you guys doing in the midst of ECQ Season 3? Doc Karen, I'll start with you.
Very okay. At least nakauwi na after several days of being quarantined, from Tokyo. Yeah. First
Nice,
day at
nice to
home,
hear that. And
actually.
first day at home.
Yes, yes.
Okay, wow. And I'm sure you miss your whole family there. Thanks. Nice to hear that you're okay, Doc Karen. How about you, LA? Kamusta with the PBA still waiting our go signal, and we're on ECQ again? How is LA Tenorio?
Actually, same as Doc Karen, no? Actually, eto, dito lang sa house, no, waiting for what's gonna happen to the PBA, and obviously we're all waiting for, what's gonna happen to our country in the future, in the future days, no? Kung ano mangyayari sa atin. Trying to be
Grabe,
safe
no?
and trying to be healthy also.
Tama ka, LA, na we're all in this guessing game together how it's going to be in the next few days. But I think with people like you and Dr. Karen sharing your stories and your experiences, and even reminders to everyone watching us to stay safe, stay healthy, and stay at home, I hope we all do our part para we can defeat this pandemic. Okay, guys, let's talk about staying fit physically, staying fit mentally. Kwentuhan lang tayo dito. I have a couple of questions, and we'll try to get some more questions from our viewers. And to our director in the backstage, I hope you can flash already our first question there. I'd like to find out kanino ba natin i-address ito. I think it's going to be on LA first. Now, let's see our first question. We'll pop it up there. Ayan, LA, I'd like to direct this question to you. As an athlete, ano yung mga mako-consider mong most challenging times for you since the pandemic started? And LA, I'll go back all the way to March of 2020. All the way when I invited you as a guest in my own online show all the way to October last year when we had the bubble in Pampanga, all the way up to now, 16, 17, 18 months. What are some of your most challenging times, LA, since everything started?
I think the most challenging time for me actually there is a lot actually as an athlete. No, number one is you know I I actually experienced also parang sort of yung katulad yan ng discussion kanina with Doxy and uh, uh, yun sa discussion
Si
nila na si
Professor Molly,
Prof.
and Doxy.
Molly, yeah, yeah. I was listening to it. Actually, as an athlete, it's really hard for us, no, to train when you're uncertain, no. Hindi natin alam kung kailan kami as a basketball players, most especially, I think we are the most, yung pinaka-risk na games kasi contact sport eh, 'di ba? Na
Yeah.
kailangan namin laruin. So, we are doing trainings every day. Uh, pero the hardest part is really the uncertainty of everything. It's really hard for us as an athlete, especially as a basketball player, working out every day, doing the same thing every day, knowing that, hindi natin alam kung kailan kami magpa-practice. Unlike before the pandemic, we work out, we practice every day,
Mhm.
we know the schedule ahead of time. So, meron kaming something to prepare, something na pine-prepare on, 'di ba? Unlike now, we're doing actually natamaan ako rin ng a little bit of parang napaisip din ako before na para medyo nagkaroon ako ng konting, yung sa mental health issue or sa depression, no? Parang konting depression. I experienced that. Actually, before going to the bubble, the PBA bubble.
Mm, mm.
There, nung unang, parang just to share it to you guys, no? Nung unang, parang first few months of the lockdown or yung
Yeah.
first few months ng lockdown natin when this pandemic started. It was okay pa. I mean, excited to work out at home, building the gym at home. Nagkaroon ako ng gym dito sa bahay. Spending time with the family, hindi ko siguro natatandaan kung gaano katagal kung gaano yung last time na I spent time with my family na ganun katagal, straight. Kasi I'm always out of town, I'm always out of the country because of basketball, you know. But going to the bubble and then doing the same thing all over again every day, every single day. And I mean, honestly, we're not used to it. We're not used to
Yeah.
that kind of setup. Um, um, may time na parang parang useless yung ginagawa ko. Parang, what is this? Ano tong ginagawa ko? Para saan tong ginagawa ko? Because with
Mhm.
that time, parang wala pa yung usapan na bubble eh. So, ano nangyari sa akin? Parang nawalan ako ng gana. Nangyari sa akin na pumasok sa isip ko, this is, useless. I'm doing the same thing all over again every day. Wake up, work out, after that, spend time with the family and stuff like that. So what happened to me is I stopped. I stopped working out totally. I stopped working out for 1 month.
Wow, okay.
1 month, exactly 1 month, like 29 days or 30 days. I really stopped working out. I stopped what I was doing back then. And then
Mhm.
the week, and I kept on praying, during that time, kung ano mangyayari. And then, yun. And, answered prayers. A week, actually, a week, the last week of that, parang time na hindi ako nakapag-workout, nagkaroon ng parang, yun nga, yung bubble,
Mm.
setup, para pinaplan na. So it was really quick, right? When we planned the bubble, di ba, Chigi, it was really quick when we
Yeah.
planned the bubble. Parang 10 days practice lang and then go na to the Pampanga setup, di ba? So, yun. And then, after 1 week, 30 days, and then after that, a week, yung 1 week straight, I went back to working out and, go back to what I was doing back then. So it was really hard, parang I shared it also to some of my friends also na talagang lahat parang this is really parang totoo na doon ko lang na-realize na wow, ito na pala talaga to. Ito na to yung pandemic na nararanasan natin. So it was really the most challenging time for me back then. So actually until now again, so the PBA stopped, and then now we're
Mhm.
working out at home. We cannot go to the
Uh-huh.
basketball court. We're just working out individually. The uncertainty again. We don't know if we're gonna push through with the bubble
Yeah.
after the August 20. It depends. It still depends on what's gonna happen outside. So again, it's a challenging time. For I'm sure for all the athletes, it's really hard. Working out that you know na walang kasiguraduhan sa lahat na nangyayari.
Oo. And to think, LA, 'di ba? If I'm not mistaken, even prior to the entrance ng teams dun sa first bubble, you even went through an operation. Tama, 'di ba? Before the bubble started last year, or parang recovering ka from an injury. And I remember that we were saying papalaruin kaya si LA because masisira yung streak of consecutive games, and we were so happy to see you on the court playing a few minutes so the streak continued. But you're right. When everybody set foot on that court, I mean, using the vernacular, it's like para kayo nahugutan ng tinik, no? A thorn was taken out from your side, and a big sigh of relief that, thank God, I'm going insane already, and it's good that I'm back on the court. Tama ba yon, LA?
Actually, correct, Chiki. Yun nga, I had a laparoscopic procedure because of my appendectomy. Uh, uh, 7 days before entering the bubble.
Woo!
So medyo it's really pero kasi ayoko kasing again I did that. I played after
Mhm.
the 12th day na after nung 12 or 11 days after my procedure, talagang that was our first game. So talagang I forced myself to play because I've been waiting for that time, no, na makapaglaro, and
Yeah.
ayoko naman sayangin talaga doon. So but again, another challenging time for our times for an athlete is the bubble setup. That was, I
Yeah.
was listening also to the conversation a while or to the presentation a while ago, and Doxy mentioned that the PBA bubble was really hard. The mental
Yes.
health issue talaga is one of the tough, very tough time for an athlete, doing the bubble setup.
Agree with you. Agree with you. I like this conversation. I jump now to Doc Karen because Doc Karen, we heard from straight from a professional athlete like LA, top level athlete. It happens to the best of them, 'di ba? He's been working out. Suddenly, in a snap, pak, I don't want na. I stop 1 month. Ayoko na. In your case, Doc Karen, you've been working with a lot of top level athletes. Of course, Heidelin Diaz. Team HD po kayo, no? But apart from Heidelin, with the other athletes that you've worked with, I'd like to pick your brains, Doc Karen. What are the usual outlets of our athletes? At least the ones that you've worked with and you've seen to the past 16 to 18 months. Ano? What are the recommended outlets that you can share with our viewers now na nakapagpa-relieve, that relieved the mental stress of the athletes that you were able to work with? Doc Karen?
Okay. So, mahirap talaga, no? Like in the case of LA, not only with the professional athletes, not only with the elite athletes, even
Mhm.
student athletes, no? Because their identity talaga is into sports. So, yung athletic identity nila is sometimes at being questioned, no? Kasi they cannot perform. They don't know when can they perform. Tapos parang yun nga,
Mhm.
tama yung sabi ni sa LA na parang bakit ko to ginagawa, no? Kailan ba yung competition? Why am I doing this, no? Para saan? That's why with the Philippine Sports Commission, what we did with our national athletes, yung first session namin after talagang magkaroon no ng pandemic is that we had kamustahan. Kamustahan per
Mm.
team. And then from the
Yeah.
kamustahan, doon mo kasi malalaman in terms of sino talaga yung greatly affected. no? So from there, nagkaroon ng individual session. So very important in terms of outlet is you let them know that you are there. No? So meron silang pwedeng puntahan, meron silang pwedeng kausapin, no? Kasi sometimes lalo na ang Pinoy, they don't want to share that parang burden to their family kasi alam din nila nagkakaproblema, no? So ang
Yeah.
tendency is they keep it to themselves. So mas maganda that they seek for a professional help, no? So yun yung pinaka-importante, may outlet. Pangalawa, it is very important that yun nga, even if walang competition in which nangyari kay Heidelin, so she was crying, no, nung sinabi nga ng Tokyo na it can be postponed or canceled in terms of
Wow.
the
Yeah.
Olympics. So she was crying, she was asking us, are you going to stay or you can leave if you want? So sabi namin, we're going to stay because with or without Olympics, sabi namin, we are here for you as a person, not as an athlete. No? So umiyak lalo siya, no? Kasi parang doon niya nakita na, ay hindi lang pala ako nakikita as athlete, but nakikita ko as a person. No? So
Mm-mm.
yun, mas naging madalas na yung, sabi ko, you call me, you text me, you message me anytime that you need me. No? Kasi syempre, yung sa kanya, she's training eh. Kahit na walang
Yeah.
Olympics, sabi namin, just train kasi para kung sakaling mag-announce na tuloy, at least you are ready. If not,
Yeah.
meron naman ibang competitions that you can compete just in case. Kasi lalo na yung sa kanya, di ba, lalo na ang professional and elite athletes, hindi pwedeng matagal na hindi sila nagte-train. No? So yun, so very important and then support from the family or friends. Kasi once na sinabi mo what you are feeling, yun nga, it's okay not to be okay, then masisense mo, what I'm feeling pala is very normal, nararamdaman din pala ng iba. And then other people can suggest ano yung ginawa nila, ano yung coping nila. Then you can also adapt or you can also share in terms of anong ginawa mo. No? So yung mga ganon. And then, yun nga, keep yourself busy. Very important.
Mm-hmm.
No? Kasi pag may time that, yun nga, yung parang wala kang ginagawa, dun papasok yung thoughts na ano ba to, bakit ganito, no? Which is understandable because prolonged na talaga itong pandemic. No?
Yeah.
The effect
Yeah.
kasi of pandemic is first physical. Talagang ang concern mo, baka magkasakit ako. Yung second is
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
financial. 'Di ba? Because it's also being affected yung financial. And then the third and the worst is the mental health, which is nangyayari
Yeah.
ngayon. No, that's why mental health is a big issue right now with pandemic. So, with us Filipino, very important din yung humor. 'Di ba? Yung nagpapatawa,
Yeah.
spirituality is very important as well, no, because there are things that we cannot control, but if we surrender, no, parang iso-surrender mo yung sitwasyon na to, 'di ba, na I cannot do anything about this, 'di ba, in terms of the protection of my family, then at least alam mo, no, that is may someone who's going to protect and provide for you.
Ang galing. Doc, again, I was nodding every single answer that you mentioned. I was agreeing. I
Mm.
was saying, oo nga, tama nga, no? That's all we need for us to be able to go through this. And I saw LA nodding as well. LA, katuwaan lang. Let's go back to 2020 PBA bubble. You were there for over a month. Share with us, kahit konti, no? What were the outlets that you particularly or the PBA players did when you were stuck in that bubble, so that you'll address that mental aspect of staying in shape, staying with the flow, staying with the game, competing at a high level. Because I would see different videos from people like Bo Belga, um, like even Mark Maroka, kayo, no? The Kings. But ikaw, LA, what were some of the things that you did back in the bubble that made you say, uy, yung sanity ko, it's still there, it's intact?
Ako actually, aside from looking forward because you know that meron ka ng alam mo ka ng games, di ba? Sa lahat
Mm.
ng gagawin mo, may pupuntahan na. So, we were all looking forward to go to practice every day, even though our
Uh-uh.
schedule was too hectic back then.
Mhm.
Being together as a team again, kasi kami bawat isa yun yung outlet namin ng team
Uh-uh.
namin. Kasi yung team namin were built to parang to have a chemistry, no? So That's why siguro naging successful din kami during that bubble. So yung chemistry namin as a team, after practice, we share our food
Yeah.
together, going to one room to another to share food, and we had a movie night. One player will host a movie night in one room, and then for the I have a lot of chips in the in the room, so I bring the food. So that kind of chemistry that we built during the bubble. That's actually yun na yung outlet namin. And of course, being a PBA family, nagkaroon din kami ng chance to know some of the players, not only on our
Yeah.
team. Nagkaroon kami ng chance, or some of my friends, actually, I have a lot of friends from the other team. No, we had the chance to get together in the room,
Yeah.
in our room, so nagkakaroon kami ng parang ano tawag, soiree, no? Sa iba't ibang players. Yung iba na nasa fifth floor, bumababa ng third floor, para magsama-sama lang, di ba? So, we're all safe naman inside the bubble, definitely, because,
Yeah.
we're together lang naman the whole time. So, nagkikita-kita rin kami, not only the team. So, it's a good outlet also for us. I think yun yung pinakamalaking factor. That's why for me and for my other teammates survived, because it's, again, the setup was really hard. Number one is having a roommate that you're not used to for what, 2 months, di ba? Kasi dito sa bahay, ako, as for me, ang katabi ko lang, wife ko, tas magiging katabi ko for 2 months is, di ba, yung teammate ko, and then you don't know him, you don't know his character really, right? You know him as a teammate, but yung personality niya, you don't know him. So, okay din yung setup na yun, na nakilala mo talaga yung teammate mo, na naging close kayo, di ba? So, we actually, that setup, instead of us having the mental issues inside the bubble, I think nangyari sa PBA noon, really a family, including
Yeah.
the PBA
Yeah.
staff, the referees. I remember, we're giving ayuda to the
Yeah.
referees and to all the PBA staff. We became a family. We parang we worked together for that bubble to be successful, and we did, and naging successful siya.
I'll pick it up from where you left off with your answer, LA. Family, pamilya, ang naging approach in the PBA, and I'm sure the viewers out there, if the PBA continues, will see more of those fun stories that LA mentioned when should they go back to a bubble setup. I go back to Doc Karen. LA enjoyed that family atmosphere with his team, with the PBA, with the other teams. Let's go back to Heidelin, Doc Karen. And I'd like to touch a little bit on that Malaysia experience of Heidelin. It was tough. It was tough for Heidelin. Very tough. We saw that video. The emotions were overflowing. She let it out. What helped Heidelin cope with the challenges she faced back when she was in Malaysia? How did she address it? How did Team HD help? How did the people around her, the close people around her, help her? Ano pong ginawa ni Heidelin to overcome that?
Okay. First suggestion sa kanya talaga is really take it one day at a time. No? Kasi if iisipin niya the Olympics, it can be 15 months, no? Matagal. Eh syempre pagka ganun, parang ang daming uncertainty and anxiety. So take it one day at a time. And then sabi nga ni Doxy kanina, I also asked her no, na meron siyang parang 1 hour of me time. Kasi very
Yeah.
important kung ano yung gusto mo. Because before the pandemic, we are so busy, no, that we tend to neglect what we want, no, kung ano yung yung gusto natin, no, that will make us happy. Kahit nga minsan yung pag-inom lang ng coffee, ngayon you have time to smell, 'di ba, and enjoy the cup of coffee. Before parang
Oh,
ang bilis na
yes.
lang talaga, 'di ba? So, and then I asked her also to parang be grateful to simple things na meron siya, no, in Malaysia. Like kunyari, yung shelter, she should also appreciate the things na meron siya doon. So kahit nung nasa condo siya, 'di ba, she was trying, wala siyang barbell noon, kaya meron lang siya
Yeah.
noon bamboo at saka yung water. No, so naging creative talaga. Sometimes nakakatawa tignan kasi 'di ba, ano ba naman 'to, 'di ba? Parang elite athlete ka pero yan yung pero ang ginawa talaga is naging creative, no? Meron pa nga yung bag, 'di ba? Yung gym bag, nilagyan lang ng mga
Mm.
gamit 'yon para mabigat.
Mm.
But also at the same time, it naging siya inspiration for other people na parang since limited yung iyong gamit doon, whatever meron ka diyan, then use it, no? So ganun yun sa kanya, and then doon natuto siya magluto. So even if in Malaysia siya, ang naging na-appreciate niya is that nawala siya sa temptation because she likes eating eh. Dito sa Philippines, 'di ba, masarap yung pagkain. So doon, more of gulay siya. No, so at the end of the day, ang laging question ko sa kanya, what are the things that you are grateful for? So even in the situation of having sa pandemic, at least meron kang nakikita kahit 2 or 3 that you are thankful for. And then pag titingnan mo 'yon, 'di ba? You go back to yung mga simple things that will make you happy. Because yun nga, I develop in her yung habit, no? Kasi yung simple habits na yan, eventually it can lead to your right mindset.
Galing, no? Habits talaga. You have to form that. You have to keep on doing it, 'di ba? Repetitive actions na you have to follow that. And only the resilient people, the resilient kind, no, such as Heidelin and even LA and the rest of our athletes, if you have that mindset, then things will be probably slightly easier. But to LA's point, lahat tayo, we went through that mental challenge, 'di ba, na how are we gonna overcome this? How are we gonna go past this? Which brings me to my last question for the two of you, and I hope you don't mind if I ask both of you answer this. We'll start with LA, giving his opinion, his thoughts on this question. LA, coming from a top athlete like you, a professional athlete like you, do you see proper nutrition, hydration, and even taking appropriate supplements as important factors, key factors in keeping a healthy state of mind for athletes like you or even yung mga weekend warriors lang LA during this tough time? Sa tingin mo, mahalaga yung mga yon, yung mga nutrition, hydration, tsaka appropriate supplements?
Well, definitely, especially now. Really the nutrition, the hydration is really appropriate now, no? It's really important right now. Especially not only again as katulad yan sa mo Chiki, no, not only to all the elite athletes or to all the athletes, most especially sa mga mga weekend warriors lang, no, yung mga yung mga naglalaro lang dito or tumatakbo lang dito. I think proper nutrition and hydration is really important, no. Ito mga bagay na to hindi lang talaga to sa mga pang-atleta. Lahat to para
Yeah.
sa atin, no. Especially now, no, our may kasabihan niya kami sa team namin is our health is our weapon, no. Kailangan natin yung sarili natin, no. With the proper nutrition, hydration, and if you're taking supplements to have an extra, kumbaga parang extra boost to your
Extra boost.
immune system or to your energy that can help, then why not, di ba? But for me, really the nutrition and the hydration is, me, I'm not taking a lot of supplements, no. I'm just taking a lot of vitamins and eating the right food, and of course drinking a lot of water, and of course has been part of my career ever since, no. So it's really important for us, and I just wanna add lang, no, and I just wanna say
Go,
lang
go,
yung
please.
sinabi ni Doc Karen kanina, no. Parang tama siya, no, yung nagawa ni Heidelin, parang napaisip ako na everything that happened, no, yung mga hirap, yung mga videos na nakita ko kay Heidelin niya na lifting with the bag and yung tubig. Kung iisipin mo nga ako as an athlete, ang first reaction ko, grabe naman, nakakaawa naman. Parang grabe naman yun. Bakit naman ganun na nangyari? As an athlete, athlete na makikita mo na our co-athlete that will 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 compete to the highest level of competition, which is Olympics. 'Di ba? Ganun yung nangyayari. But yun na ano lang ako na parang na ano parang napaisip lang ako na katulad ng sabi ni Doc Karen, you just have to be really grateful, no? Even though in our part as a basketball player, kung kami yun, kahit crumpled papers lang yan, makita mo and shoot it in the trash can, and that still you can work on your shooting form on that kind, di ba? You just have to be really grateful and be ano parang yun nga parang kahit nangyayari yun, parang ito lang, maging grateful tayo na nandito tayo sa sitwasyon na to. And ending, 'di ba? She won the gold medal. I think nanalo siya ng gold medal not because of her training for the past few years or past few months. I think she won that gold medal because of that kind of gratefulness and creativity na ginawa niya. And it was really very inspiring, kung masasabi niyo kay Miss Heidelin and
Yes.
nakilala ko siya because we're in the same parang isang ini-endorse namin. But saludo talaga kami sa kanya. Saludo ako sa kanya. Kung makakarating man.
Ay, sige po, I'll let her know.
Ganda, LA, that's real talk coming from the heart from top athlete. Nakita mo yon, and I like what you said there. It's the training is there, the skill set is there, but it's that demeanor, that gratefulness, 'di ba? That character that Heidelin had, of course, together with her family people supporting her team
Yeah.
HD.
Support.
And that's the reason why she was able to surpass all this. Doc Karen, kayo naman po, yung thoughts nyo on that question that I asked earlier. Hydration, nutrition, appropriate supplements, mahalaga po ba ito coming from your end, knowing that you're part of this Team HD that produced us our first gold?
Yes, very important, no? Especially sa kay Heidelin, I saw that in her, no, yung nutrition, hydration, that's why her nutritionist is really kasama sa likod, no, during competition. Kasi part siya ng strategy in terms of what to do, paano mag-recover, no, which is very, very important. In terms of mindset also, yung sa kanya, naging confident siya because alam niya that she was prepared. No, it can be yung sa nutrition, yung sa hydration, and yung sa preparation. Siguro I can share lang, no, days before she competed, ang sinabi niya sa akin, Doc, hindi ako makapaniwalang ang lakas ko. Yun yung sinasabi niya. Alam niya na malakas siya, pero hindi siya makapaniwala. So, syempre, mapapaisip ka, di ba, as sports psychologist niya. Sabi ko lang sa kanya, kung hindi ka naniniwala, sinong maniniwala? No? You really have to believe that you can. And then dun kami bumalik. Remember yung mga hardships mo before that you are training every day kahit pandemic. No? And then you nag-start ka ng weightlifting at the age of 11. Now you are already 30 years old. So you are considered expert in what you are doing. No? Kasi yung confidence ng tao, manggagaling siya sa experience, manggagaling siya sa feedback. No? So very important that you always remind her. So sabi ko, more than anything, you are prepared. Sabi ko, tignan mo yung kalaban mo, sa lahat ng kalaban mo, ikaw lang ang may 4 times, pang-4 na beses mo na ng Olympics. So you have a great advantage to them. No? So what I always tell her is that during training, we look at the strength of your opponent so that you can prepare for it. But during competition, you focus on your strength. No? Kasi madalas ang athlete baliktad pagka competition naka-focus sila sa strength ng kalaban, which is wrong, no? During training, you focus on the strength of your opponent so you can strategize, but during competition you focus on your strength, no? Kasi doon magbo-boost yung self-belief, yung confidence, and so on. That's why when she entered, no, the stage, talagang ino niya yung stage because she know for a fact that she really prepared for it. No, so that is very important. And then sabi ko sa kanya, we have done our part already. If this gold is for us, then God will give this to us.
Wow! A beautiful story there from Doc Karen. And LA, I saw you nodding because I think ganyan din even in the PBA, even in your own game, LA, that's the reason why you haven't, 670 games, consecutive games. Sana magtuloy yan hanggang on the day of your retirement kung kailan man yan, which is about mga 20 years from now, bago mag-retire si LA Tenorio. Lapasan pa niya si Big J siguro. But you're right. You're right. It's beautiful to hear those nice stories, especially coming from you, Doc Karen and LA. And I'm a little bit sad. I'm looking at the clock right now, and unfortunately, good things will have to come to an end. And I'd like to chat more with you, Doc Karen and LA, but we have to let you go and also let our viewers go. But before we go our separate ways po, no? For this evening, this fantastic Thursday evening, perfect way to end our GSSI webinar series 2021. Doc Karen, LA, it's no secret anymore that our country, just like other countries around the world, we are not yet out of the woods with regard to the pandemic that we're experiencing right now. And from all our viewers earlier when we started at 4:30 up to now was stayed with us, and those who will watch this later on, we're gonna be here for I don't know when. Sabi nga ni LA, we don't know. August 20, we'll find out. Will we stay for another 10, 11, one more month? We don't know. And after hearing all your stories about Heidelin, Doc Karen, and you, LA, humbly admitting that it once bothered you, you had to stop training and all, would like to hear your final messages to all those watching us right now. Anong mensahe nyo for every Juan de la Cruz watching right now, going through this together with you, Doc Karen, LA, ako, and everybody else? Anong mensahe nyo bago tayo maghiwa-hiwalay tonight? Doc Karen, I'll start with you.
Okay, so siguro final message to everyone. Sabi nga natin, di ba, yung past is something that we should be grateful for kasi nangyari siya. Future is something that we look forward, especially ngayong pandemic, di ba? Parang we want to do something, a lot of things in the future. But we should always enjoy the present. The reason why it is called present because it's a gift that we have now. No? So this pandemic is a reminder for us that it's a gift. No? Every day that we have with our family is a gift, kaya siya present. So I think we enjoy the moment. No? So with the athletes, that's also very important for them to be the nowist, Nowist. They focus on the now. So yeah, present.
I love that. Look at the past to help
Galing.
you. Look at the future and prepare for it, but enjoy the now. Enjoy the now. Doc Karen, salamat po. LA, ikaw ang huli kong tatanungin to wrap our kwentuhan portion here in our GSSI webinar series. Your thoughts, LA. Your final message.
Actually, kung ano yung sinabi ni Doc Karen, yun lang. Ang galing eh. Parang, pwede bang paki-text sa akin? Okay, parang I want to read
Ang
that
ganda,
every
di
day.
ba?
You know, that, ganda nun
Di ba?
Parang really, that's really true. Not only for an athlete, but,
Yes.
to everyone.
Correct.
So, galing. But, but again, I just wanna add to that lang, no, to all the viewers and to all the athletes or, lahat ng ating mga kababayan na nandyan ngayon. I just want to say na stay positive lang. Everything will come into an end, 'di ba? Katulad yan ng show natin ito. And I'm sure may hangganan tong nangyayari sa atin ito. I think we just have to take this also as parang isipin lang din natin ito na parang opportunity, na sa mga pwede nating gawin in the future. Diba? Opportunity rin to na magawa in the future. And lastly, siguro gusto ko lang sabihin na let's be grateful, no, sa lahat ng mga na nagagawa natin ngayon or sa nangyayari sa atin ngayon. I think God has a purpose for everything, and I truly believe in that, no, na merong mangyaring mas maganda sa atin, no? Not only in our country but in the whole world. No? We just have to be positive and be grateful about it. And of course, syempre, dasal lang tayo. Yun lang ang pinaka magagawa natin talaga na sa tingin ko na very powerful right now. Is prayers talaga. So, thank you everyone. Thank you.
Wow! Ang ganda ng ating conversation, our chat here this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you guys Dr. Karen Trinidad of Team HD, and of course, the General, the Iron Man of the PBA from Barangay Ginebra, LA, Tenorio. Maraming salamat sa inyo, Doc Karen and LA,
Thank
and I
you.
wish you all the best. Stay safe,
Thank you.
stay healthy, and LA, praying that we get to go back on the hard court soon so that we can continue entertaining our sports fans, ha? Ingat kayo, ha?
Yes. Ingat. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doc
Thank you.
Karen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doc Karen, LA Tenorio. Wow, I hope you guys are having fun because I am having fun here, and we will continue to have fun as we now move on to our Gatorade Hydration Q&A. As mentioned earlier, we will be asking 3 questions that we got from the presentations of Professor Molly and Dr. George Canlas. And if you were able to jot down notes, then it will be easy for you. As mentioned, first to give the right answer on the comment box, okay, our social media team will monitor that. You can bring home either the Gatorade socks, the bike bottle, or the Gatorade backpack. And we'll go with our first question for this evening before we part ways. Question number 1. Abangan nyo po yan. We'll be posting it on your screens. There you go. And checking your level of hydration, a light color of your blank means you are drinking enough fluids. Type your answers right now. First to get the right answer will win a prize from Gatorade. In checking your level of hydration, light color of your blank means you are drinking enough fluids. We move on to question number 2. And question number 2 is, WHO recommends that free sugars should not exceed 50% of daily total energy intake. True or false? Yan lang po. True or false? Type your answers. And I'm looking at our chat box here. Nice. Ang bilis. People are answering quickly. And question number 3, our final question for this evening. Again, socks, bike bottle, and Gatorade backpack. A supplement that is also a stimulant and is commonly used for athletic performance across endurance-based situations. Ano po ito? Okay? Ano po ito? Type your answers, and then the first person to type the correct answer will bring home that prize. And please wait for our social media friends of Gatorade to contact you on how you can claim your prizes. And again, final reminder to all our viewers, please watch till the end of the show for instructions on how to get a certificate of attendance. I mentioned earlier, a QR code will be flashed at the end of this live video that is only accessible at a limited time. Meaning, when a recording of this video is uploaded in the Gatorade Facebook page, by that time, registration for the certificates will be closed. So make sure that you access the registration link immediately when you see that QR code. And once again, those who got the answers correctly, please wait for our social media team to get in touch with you on how to claim your prizes. All right? And I guess this is it. This is how we part ways. Thank you very much for being with us for the past, 6 weeks, a month and a half for the GSSI webinar series 2021, from the basics of riding a bicycle, training at home, the basics of running, up to overall wellness, nutrition, hydration, even mental wellness. So we'd like to thank all of you who joined us for the past 6 weeks. On behalf of all our friends from Gatorade, from Rebecca, Liam, Mikey, Miss Melay, Marcia, Denise, and even Roy, ako po si Chicky Reyes nagsasabing maraming salamat po. Thank you very much for joining us, being with us for the GSSI Webinar Series 2021. And please do not forget, we're not yet out of the woods. Stay safe, stay healthy, pray, please pray. And we'll see you all in the next edition of the GSSI Webinar Series. Good night, guys.